So, one of my buddies just recently bought this Washburn acoustic. And you know, it's a cheapie, but it's pretty. The inlay on it is cool. It's got some neat looking wood on it for sure. I mean, I'm sure it's laminate, but you know, it's whatever. So the deal is, this action, you could throw a pack of dogs through there. It's way too high. Let's measure it just out of curiosity. It's off the scale. We have 140 thousandths on the high E, which should be literally half that. And we've got like 145 thousandths on the bass side. Also, everybody say hello to Abby. She has no personal boundaries, and she thinks she needs to be on my desk all the time. So we're gonna see what we can do. Part of the problem with these is a lot of times, I swear they just stick these bridges in and don't do anything about their height. And I mean, just bringing that bridge down is going to be a big help. And if we put our finger, sorry, let me get in frame here. If we put our finger on the 1st fret and the 15th fret, yeah, that truss rod needs to be tightened quite a bit as well. So I'm going to leave these strings on it for now. He's got a fresh set of strings that he wants me to put on it. Although the ones that he brought me are 13 to 56, which is massively huge. I should ask him what he wants it tuned to. Because if he's going standard, that's a pretty humongous string. Just out of curiosity, let's see what it's tuned to right now. That's a D. And that's an A. So he must want this a step down. I'm actually going to stop this video and message him real quick and ask him. All right, got a hold of him. And he does want it in just regular standard. This guitar is already struggling to keep strings straight with what's on it. And he gave me some 13 to 56s. This guitar is going to really struggle with that. I have some 12 to 53s on hand, so I am going to do those instead. But we're going to try to do as much of the work as we can with the strings that are on this, and then we'll put the fresh ones on when we're done. So off camera, I did do a little bit of adjustment to the truss rod, and we've got much closer to where we want to be as far as relief goes. You can see it's still a mile off the fretboard, and it's, like I said, just because this bridge insert is just way too tall. So we're gonna slacken up the strings. I'm not taking them off all the way. I just want to get them slack enough that I can pull that bridge out. And we're gonna sand it down. And we need to come down quite a bit. Sometimes you can sneak these out of here, sometimes you can't. Yeah, we got it. All right, yeah, you can tell they just grabbed one out of a box at the factory and stuck it on here. Now we were at a good like 140 thousandths. And you usually have to about double what you take off of the bridge to come down, which would mean taking off I mean, that would basically mean taking off 140,000. So I'm not going to go that far to begin with, because even though I know that's true, I often don't trust that math. So I think I'm going to start with taking off like 80 thousandths. What I like to do is just grab a marker and kind of cover that whole area. And then I'll grab my calipers. And I said we wanted about 80 thousandths, so we're going to make an 80 thousandths-ish. Then we're going to come to here, and you kind of just get on the edge a little bit. And as you scrape, it's going to leave a nice mark that's easy to see. I don't know if you can see that super well. Yeah, you can kind of see that mark. It's right at the top there. Just get that nice and bold. And I'm gonna go out to the garage and use my belt sander to pull that down, and I'll come back with you and we'll see what it looks like. All right, so I've gone out and I've taken off that much right to our line. So I'm gonna stick this in here. Let's see what our string heights look like now. Typically I don't tighten up all the strings to do this. We might actually be pretty close there. These little chord tuners are like indispensable. So I can see that it's still decently high. See what it's like with the capo on the first fret. A lot of times, one of the last things that you want to do is deal with the depth of the nut slots. So when you're checking for action, because that's the last thing I'm going to do, just put a capo on the first fret, and then you can really check what your action's like at the 12th fret. So now we're down to about 60 thousandths. Apologies, I know you can't really see that, but at about 60 thousandths there. We're still pretty high on the bass side. Almost 90 thousandths, like 85 thousandths. So what we're going to need to do is pull that saddle back out and sand down just the bass side, bring it down, oh, probably 10 thousandths or so. So I'm going to do that real quick, and I'll be back with you. So I went out and got that adjusted down a little bit more. now, we've got nearly 70 thousandths down here. And about 90 there. It's a little confusing because I feel like we were lower than that to begin with. Makes me think that saddle is not sitting down as far as it should be. Part of the reason that I like to do this with old strings is because I'm really stretching them and letting off the tension a lot of times, and eventually they will start breaking from dealing with the tension going back and forth that far so many times. I'd much rather do that with the strings that are about to go in the trash than the ones that are about to go on it. Definitely sitting in there all the way. Let me take just a little bit more off the bottom of this, and then we'll see where we're going. I had the camera turned off, and a perfect example of what I was talking about. I just tightened and loosened this high E string too many times, and I decided to leave the chat. That's why you do it with the old strings, so when you break one, it doesn't really matter. Just gonna take this one. I usually like to fold them in half, and then I kind of just pull them through. It makes them fit in the trash can a lot easier. But we'll get the rest of these tuned up here. Well, we're down to about 80 thousandths on the bass side. We're on the B here, but we've got just over 60 thousandths there. Still a decent amount of breakaway angle. One of the things you want to watch out for, especially on older acoustics, is sometimes if there's too much, like if the neck has come too far this way because the neck joint's not as good as it once was or whatever, you'll end up lowering that to the point where there's no break angle where the strings come through the bridge right behind here, and you can end up with buzzing and all sorts of other issues behind it. But we still have a pretty solid break angle there, so I can still come down a little bit on that and we'll be okay. This is getting a lot closer than it was for sure, but we're still not quite there, I don't think. Let me check this with the capo on the first fret. Yeah, we're right on 70 thousandths there. Actually, I think we're there. I think it's just time to start working the nut down a little bit. So I'm going to, let's see. Yeah, we'll just keep you in frame like that. You can hang out with me here for a minute while I do this. And we'll do the high E last when we get the new strings on it. So right now our nut heights are actually pretty close. This high E is not going to need anything. Do a little bit on the A here. These are some fairly cheap nut files, but I've made them work for quite a while now. Now you can always take more off, but putting back on is never as good. So you just want to start with a very mild, and we don't need to go very far either. So we're going to see where we sit right there. Still got a ways to go down. I'm pretty impressed this guitar actually has a bone nut and bone saddle on it. I think he said he paid like $300 for this thing. It's definitely much closer. So now we'll get over to our D. This is one of those situations where you might ask, like, but Ryan, isn't there a spec for how far the strings should be off of that fret? Yeah, there is. I don't follow it. I do it by feel. Much better. This G is really quite high here. There's a lot of bounce. Let me bring it in closer. What I'm looking at here is the amount of space that's between that string and the first fret. Pardon my dirty fingernails. But you can see there's a decent amount of room there, whereas the ones I've already done, they have room, but they're much closer. So this one, you can see, is noticeably higher than the other ones. So we'll just keep moving on here. Now that one I know is going to be bigger than a 17. So let's see. I've got a few different types of files down here. Yeah, here's a 24. This will work well for this one. What I like to do is bring that down a little bit, then I'll come back in, create a little bit of a bevel on there so we know the string is sitting down as far in that as it needs to be. And we're getting closer, but we're not quite there yet, so let's come back in here. Much better. A little bit of bounce, but we still got room under that string. Same story here on this B. I found with the top two ones, the 10 on these Hosco things works up until a pretty big size. So I tend to use that. These ones tend to go a lot faster too, so you really need to file a little and check, file a little and check. Not too bad, we can take a tiny bit more. There we go, a little bit of bounce. I'm not going to do much more with that E. I'm going to go ahead and get fresh strings on this. And we'll kind of clean it a little bit while we do that, and we're going to condition the fretboard. Might even do just a light polish on the frets. Let me get these strings off and we'll come back. So I know this might be kind of boring for some of you who have done this stuff, but I'm going to go over some basic things anyway. First thing that I do on any guitar, whether it's new or not, pretty much all of them that have a nut on the tuner, it's a 10mm. Just come up here and see if they're snug. See, that one was loose. Do not tighten them too much, so you will just break the tuner off inside, but just make sure they're nice and snug. You just don't want them loose. A little snug. That one's pretty good. See, I'm just using my fingertips. I'm not cranking on it. There. Oh, they're nice and snug and happy. Usually I set myself up for getting the fresh strings in by putting the holes for the strings where it's going to be an easy shot for the new strings to go through. And also, I see a lot of these nylon washers in here just get completely smashed by people who tighten up these tuners way too much. Now most of these feel pretty good. This one's pretty loose. This one could be tighter. That one's nice and tight. These others are good. So we come in here with our little Phillips screwdriver. And just a tiny tweak on that. There. A lot stiffer, but not crazy. This one, same deal. Just gonna give it a tiny little tighten there. Much smoother, not loose. All right, we're good there. Now before I go and do everything else, factory frets are rarely very shiny, and they kind of collect scuzz faster when they're not very shiny. So I like to come up here and just give them all a quick polish. Now, some of you might think I'm insane, but I use a polish wheel on my drill. And actually all of mine are being cleaned right now, so we're just going to use the one that was on this and we'll wash it afterwards. This is usually my paint polishing pad, but like I say, my other ones are soaking right now, so we'll use this one. And in fact, I may just use my regular polish. Usually for polishing frets, I use mag and aluminum polish, Mother's. This stuff is awesome for polishing frets. It will like mirror shine those suckers. Super awesome stuff. It's great for a lot of other things as well. But I don't want to contaminate my pad even though I'm going to clean this. So we're just going to use some regular polishing compound on this one. And we're not trying to get it soaking wet, just get a little bit all around on there. Kind of rub that in. This helps it to not fling off all over my body. Now I'm not pushing super hard. I'm just kind of rocking back and forth so I make sure I get the whole length of every fret. And if you're thinking to yourself, but Ryan, you just shoved a whole bunch of polish down into the fretboard. You're correct. But the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come here and clean this with a toothbrush. The stuff that was originally in this bottle was actually really great stuff, but it's currently a mixture of simple green, alcohol, and water. It's good cleaner and doesn't, I have yet to see it hurt any finishes. It does a great job of cleaning fretboards. So I'm just going to come in here with my toothbrush and clean all that polish off of there. So now we can come back with our blue shop towels. We're going to wipe down the whole top of this guitar here in a second. So we're not too worried about that, but just get the fretboard nice and clean and dry. Make sure there's no more polish anywhere. But you can see now, if you kind of look back at what we had for frets, and now we've got a real nice shiny polish on them. They will stay cleaner longer. They'll play a cleaner note. I did notice that this must have had something set on it at some point, and one of the strings made a little divot that kind of goes in a line right here. And you can almost not feel it with your fingers, and it's not going to hurt anything. I don't want to try to do, you know, a whole bunch of fretwork on a brand new cheap acoustic. I don't think he's going to notice that at all, you know, as far as his playing goes. So we're just going to leave that be. So there you go. We're all clean now on this fretboard. So now I'm going to come back with, as soon as I find the bottle, where is my bottle of fretboard conditioner? It's gone somewhere and I'm not sure. There it is. This is really great stuff. I like it a lot. You know, my channel's not big enough to be sponsored. And also I've been doing this for a really long time, and I've just found products that I just truly like, and the Diodario Hydrate is really great stuff for this. So you want to put this on here somewhat liberally. You know, don't waste it. But you want to make sure that you're getting this nice and wet so that this oil can really seep down into this board. We're also going to be doing this on the bridge. I usually just use what's left over on my finger from doing the fretboard, because this is usually rosewood or some variant of it as well. Sometimes it's ebony. I think a lot of laurel is being used these days. But just get it all in there, make sure it's getting in next to the frets. Pull a bunch of it, come over to the bridge, get that. Don't worry about getting on the body. First of all, it's not going to hurt anything, and second of all, we're still going to wipe off the top of the body anyway. And just leave this stuff sit for a few minutes. Let it get a nice soak into the fretboard before you go and wipe it off. My partner's embroidery machine you hear in the background. She's a pretty incredible embroidery person. So now I'm just going to come in here. Usually I go cross grain the first time. It kind of works it in a little bit, gets the excess off. And we're going to come back with the other side. Same thing. You can kind of start working it long ways. I usually try to make sure to really get into the corners next to the frets, otherwise it'll kind of seep out from the frets. Just, you know, just use your fingernail to get under that edge, you know, just like this. I typically keep my fingernails with just a little bit on the end of them for stripping wires, you know, just for grabbing things easier. And we're just helping that oil work in, we're getting all the excess off. And it gives the board just a little bit of a polish, kind of burnishing while you're doing this a little bit. I always come and grab the sides too, because usually some of it gets over the edge. Now, we've got that done. Before we get strings on this, I'm going to come back with microfiber. I'm not sure what he got on this, but there's like dots on the top of this finish. I noticed that as soon as I pulled it out of the case. Yeah, just get a nice little clean on here. Wipe around the edges. This is a fairly new guitar, so it's not particularly dirty. But you know, when you're doing work for somebody, it's always, people will always be happy that you gave them back something nice and clean. Oh, this is another tip I want to talk to you about. The backs of new tuners on new guitars have plastic on here that they don't remove at the factory. I think it's just because it takes them too much time. But during manufacturing, there's plastic on here. It's not meant to stay there. And it will get nasty and collect oil and decolor the metal underneath your tuner. So when you buy a new guitar, look at the back of the tuners. There's oftentimes these little protective plastic pieces. Take them off. You're not preserving anything, you're actually just making it nastier and worse, because this stuff yellows over time and it's not a good deal. Get off my fingers. All right, and I always do just a little bit of a wipe there. So there. Now I've got a nice, clean, fresh palette for our new strings. Usually by the time you've done all that and you come back, there'll be a little bit of that oil lifting back out. Just come back over with your cloth. Just kind of give it another wipe real quick. So we've got our bridge piece that's ready to go. Stick that back down in its home. And we'll open up a fresh pack of string. Wow, I did not expect that. Apparently the heat shrinking was a little aggressive on that one. And if you want to save yourself a little time from going back and forth between different jobs, I like to put all the strings in first and then just lay them to the side and grab the one I need and go. And another quick tip for you guys is before you put the strings in, grab the end of it with your finger like this, with the ball sort of the flat face here. Give them a little bit of a bend. That way, when you put these through the hole and you're pushing this in, it's a very natural way for it to come up, because inside of the bridge, these are holding kind of here. A little bit of like a fulcrum type thing going on there. So this just helps them seat better. Sorry, I have a string in my mouth. I'm a big fan of Diodario strings, always have been. I always tell people if I'm going fancy, I get string joy strings every time. But if I just want good strings that are most likely gonna last me a pretty decent amount of time, that sound good out of the box and retain their tone for a long time, I always go with Diodario. Never been a fan of Ernie Ball. If a customer brings them and wants them on their guitar, I'll put them on, but I don't like them myself. Never been a fan. But you can see here how we're setting ourselves up at this end so that we can go down and work at this end. There, all of our strings are ready. Like I said, we can lay those to the side. Come back over here. I'm gonna bring you in a little bit closer on the headstock because I want to talk about the way that I do this. Everybody's got their own trick, but I like mine. So typically, especially on acoustic guitars, I'll go about one length to the next one. So pull it tight, and then roughly the space in between here and back, pull that back out. And on this low E, we're not gonna do the top and bottom trick. We're just gonna go underneath. That's plenty. I don't think I've ever had an E string slip in the tuner in my entire life. You'll notice we have buzz. That's because we don't have enough tension on the neck yet, but we will. So don't worry about that, it's okay. And I always cut these right away, get them out of my way. And we'll move on to the next one. Same story on this one. We're not gonna do the over-under trick on this one because I never have them slip and it's just needless to do that. We're just getting it underneath and we're keeping our fingers there, so we're keeping it nice and tight as it goes in. Now, get to this third one here, we're gonna do the over-under. All you people who do the thing where you like put them inside and then you like bend the string up over the other strings to lock it into place. Nothing annoys me more than when somebody brings me a guitar that's done that way. Not only is it not really helpful, it makes changing strings a much larger pain in the ass than it needs to be. The way that I'm showing you to do this right now, I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I'm telling you, trial and error of a million different ways to do this. This has worked the best for me. It's the easiest, and it's really easy to get the strings off when it's time to do a change. You're not gonna have slippage. Okay, so we're out. We're getting our extra one. When this string comes around, we're gonna go over the top. And And then when the other side of that comes around, we're going to go underneath. And when you get back to the beginning, you'll already be underneath. And what that's doing is locking that string in there, because where it's going around the bottom and going around the top, it's biting down on that string in between it and holding it in place. And that goes the same for the G all the way to the E. Get our full one. Over the top, under the bottom. We're already set up for under the bottom on this one. Locking that string in nice and tight. And we get about another wrap on top of that, which is all the wrap you need. And you know, there's always people in the comments that are like, oh, why don't you, you know, do this and wrap it around by hand? It's so much less time. I mean, that's fine too. All I know is this is the way my muscle memory wants to do it. Works great for me. Once again, going over the top of that string as it comes through. Now we're going under the bottom. We're coming around, we're already set up for the bottom. Locking that string in place and getting one more full wrap underneath that. Finally with our high E. Sometimes I'll give the high E just a tiny bit extra, just to be absolutely sure, but I mean, we're still locking that string in there nice and strong. Again, I don't experience slippage ever. And I've been not only working on guitars my entire life, but I've been gigging since I was 12, and I'm gonna be 39 here in a couple months, so. All right, now we've got our strings on. Let's get a good bass tune here. I'm not stretching these yet because I'm just gonna check and see. Here, let me get you guys back out here so you can kind of see the whole picture. Okay. Nothing is better than just playing it and seeing how it feels. Definitely feels much better than it did. Let's see where our truss rod's at. about right. You just want just the teeniest bit of bounce there. That feels pretty gosh darn good. Just checking my string heights here again. It looks like I can make some tiny adjustments up here. So while I'm just holding it like this, let me get you down in here a little better. Sorry, you get some lag. So I still have a little bit more height between the string and the first fret than I really want there to be. So while I'm holding this and it's in tune, I'm just gonna kind of feel them. That low E, it's pretty close, but I'm gonna very carefully take off just the tiniest amount. Got to be real careful here. You don't want to go too far. So we'll take our 46 side. Actually, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up this slot, because sometimes when you go to a string that's a little bit bigger, you'll find that it's because it was actually not sitting down in the slot all the way. So you can just kind of open it up a little bit and set your string back in there. Yeah, we still got a little bit more than I want. And I can see we're sitting all the way down in the slot. So, come back in here. That should be much better. And it's kind of the same story across the board here. And we're just going to do a little bit on each one. Move that string out of the slot. We're going to take our 36. Not much. Sneak up on it. Not bad. I feel like we could get a tiny bit more out of that one. Much better. D is pretty close. Honestly, I don't think I'm gonna touch it. G is pretty close. This B is still kind of high. And I don't detune all the way, just enough that you can kind of grab the string out of the slot that it's in. And again, we're just gonna use the 10 side of this. Just a little bit. Very good. And that E that I just kind of touched when the string wasn't even there, it's perfect. So we're gonna leave it alone. Now obviously you don't wanna put a guitar back in the case with a bunch of bone dust. Just give it a nice little wipe with the brush, nice and clean now. Now, we had this in tune. The strings have been at tension for a minute. I'm gonna come in here. with my hands, with my fingers, I'm gonna grab, and I'm gonna do, I kind of do a little bit of this sort of movement. I'm pushing with my thumb and pulling with my fingers, and I'm just gonna carefully go up and down the string a couple times. That little click that you heard was that string getting back into its final resting place in there. And we're just giving it just a very light stretch, kind of pinching it in between our fingers a little bit here. This takes that initial huge amount of stretch out of the string so that you stay in tune for much longer. Now you can see after I've done that, we're pretty bad out of tune. We got rid of that stretch. So, there you go. Nice and clean. Everything's the way that it should be. In our final measurements here on the 12th fret, we've got just a hair over 50 thousandths here on the high E, which is perfect. And here on the low E, we've got about 80 thousandths, which is it's a tad bit high, but really that's in the ballpark. And honestly, feels great to play. I'm not getting any buzzing. Rings out nice and true and clear. So I think we're done. Now I know how I have a whole bunch of new subscribers, so I just want to say thank you so much for being here. I do this stuff because it's my passion. I'll probably be a little bit more silly on the camera here and there. Honestly, I'm trying to be kind of quiet because my girlfriend's behind me working and I don't want to be a complete dork over here. But yeah, there'll be a lot more good content coming out. I try to share the tips and tricks that I know. Most of this stuff I learned, doing this for friends, doing this for myself. Originally from northern Minnesota, and I, there was no techs up there to help us when things broke, and my dad's a big nerd, so he taught me a lot of things. But man, if you guys could do the commenting thing, the liking thing, hit that thumbs up. I know you hear that on every channel, but as I'm learning, the more and more I do this, that's really important for the algorithm to show this to other people. And I really want to create more of this stuff. I think I have good tips and tricks to help people out, and I'm always working on different stuff. Sometimes it's guitars, sometimes it's amplifiers, sometimes it's turntables. You never know what I'm going to be getting into. I work on pretty much anything people pay me to work on. So, anyway, that's it. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.